Dai-nos hoje, ó Senhor, perdoai as nossas dívidas, assim como perdoamos aos nossos devedores. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. We are here today to continue with our series of talks, Spiritist talks. And every week we have been inviting good friends, good representatives of Spiritism throughout the world to bring us more knowledge, more understanding about Spiritism. Today we have our dear friend Álvaro Mordechai. Álvaro is from Brazil. Álvaro is a Spiritist speaker which talks based on his studies on the Old Testament. He speaks fluently Hebrew, amongst other languages. He studied and learned Jewish laws and customs through years of living in Jerusalem. He aims to combine the knowledge of the interpretation of the Bible's sacred texts through the wisdom of the Jewish people with the gospel of Jesus under the light of Spiritism. He gives lectures and conferences in Brazil and abroad. Álvaro Mordechai is also a promoter and coordinator of group trips to the humanitarian organization Fraternity Without Borders. But more important than that, Álvaro is a very dear friend to us. We have been known Álvaro for quite a few time, and we are very happy to have him here today for him to share with us his knowledge and understanding from the Old Testaments, bringing them to light in a way that it puts all together with Spiritism as well. But before we start, we always like to start our talks with a prayer. So I'm going to conduct you in a brief prayer so that we can better prepare ourselves and bring to our homes the good spirits so that we can be open to these lessons we are about to learn. So we invite you all to close your eyes, to elevate your hearts and your thoughts, connecting with the benefactors that have been with us, that have been assisting us in this journey, and that helps us to take our way back to our Heavenly Creator. May we feel their guidance, inspiration, and protection throughout our meeting, our talk today. And we ask especially for our friend Álvaro, that he may feel all the time the presence of the benefactors that will be inspiring him to bring through this beautiful talk the teachings we are so eager to learn and to understand. Okay, Álvaro, welcome. We are so happy to have you here straight from Brazil and giving us this beautiful talk about the prophet Jonah. So now it's with you. Be welcome.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's amazing to be here, and I appreciate very much the opportunity of being talking about the Old Testament in the view of Spiritism itself. And the most amazing thing is to understand that there's a big mind, the mind of Christ, behind all the three revelations, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Spiritism. And actually, there is no borders in between one to another. And to see that the knowledge gets completed and deeper when we link out these three revelations, it's amazing. And to start, I always like to say a brief that it's in the introduction according to the Spiritism. And it says that in many points of the Bible, the sacred authors, they look, when we read it for the first time, a little bit or very much intelligible. And this happens because there's a lack of a key. And this key, we can find it in the Spiritism. Kardec will say to us that we can find the Spiritism in many times, in many places of the ancient times, in every epoch of humanity. And its vestige, we can find in the writings, in the monuments, and in the beliefs. But this Spiritism, it comes out, we will say Kardec in the Spiritist magazine in 1868, when he says of the psychology of the ancient Hebrew people. And he will talk about a book written by Henry Stake. And in this book, the Spiritism in Bible, he will say that we just find in all this sacred text, in the sacred books, we just find ourselves in this maze. We just find it, the Spiritism, after sitting and bringing a lot of reflection, and when we try to understand the metaphorical, the parables that are inside of these sacred books, these sacred authors. So we understand that taking out the Spiritism from the Bible, from the Old Testament, it sometimes requires a lot of efforts. But Kardec will say to us that in the same way that the Spiritism opened new horizons for the future, it brings no less brilliant light into the mysteries of the past. Today, we are going to talk about the prophet Jonah. In Hebrew, we say Yonah. The prophet Jonah in the light, in the view of the Spiritism. And where is it, this story? We will find it in the Old Testament. But it seems a little bit vain sometimes to say Old Testament, because sometimes we get confused and we don't know exactly if it's just one book or many books, or how many books. It's the Old Testament itself. In Hebrew, we say the Old Testament as Tanakh, that it's an acronym, the first letters of three words. The first word, Torah, that it's composed by 5 books, that it was written by Moses. Second word, it's Nevi'im, it's all the prophets. And the third word, Ketuvim, it's the writings, as book of Ecclesiastes, Psalms, book of Ruth, and many other writings. So altogether, it's 39 books that we call Old Testament. And from the first to the last book, there are a few hundred years of difference in time. So we are going to talk about one of these books, the story of Jonah, the book of Jonah the prophet. But we are not actually just using the book of Jonah, because among these more than 3,000 years of history of the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, we had many missionaries that brought light into these texts. And altogether, it composes few hundred books that we can call this the oral tradition of the Jewish people. Among these, we can find it in the Talmud, the Midrashim, the Agadot, and all these teachings brings also light that under the view of the Spiritism, it becomes so clear and we can take out this metaphoric way of explaining divine laws and explaining situations that we can bring to our days, to this day on. So, to help us, before beginning the story of Jonah, we will talk and we will ask the help of Emmanuel in the book O Consolador, that we don't have this book yet in English, but Emmanuel were asked and he answered usual questions that probably few of us still have. In the question 276, Emmanuel will be asked if the predictions in sacred books were given directly by Christ, because it looks like the prophets, they were inspired directly by Christ. And he will say that the Old Testament, in the sacred books, we will find the divine sources of the Christianity. So if we want to understand the Christianity a little bit deeper, we should go further its sources. And their sources are in the Old Testament. And he will say that they were, yes, directly inspired by Christ, because just Jesus Christ could knew as much as needed the hearts of his recalcitrant rebels. And he will say that only him could prospect individually the future by the love and the mercy of God. So we understand in the next question where Emmanuel is asked if the prophets of the Old Testament are the only prophets in the history of humanity. And Emmanuel will say to us that no, we had many prophets that were non-Jewish. And we can say Socrates, we can say Confucius, we can say Buddha Sakyamuni. They are also prophets of Christ. And they were also preparing the way for the coming of Jesus Christ. And what's interesting is that Emmanuel will tell us that there is a big difference, or a difference between all the prophets and the prophets of the Jewish people. That the prophets of the Jewish people, they were called to work in the religious progress of the word. And it's in question 279, Emmanuel will give us an answer when he is asked if the prophets, they were priests for the Jewish people. And he will say to us that the prophets, they worked hard by the inspiration of God, and they didn't work or served for a social convention as economic or in any other social interest. They just worked for God, and they came as slaves, they came in the desert, they came in many different points of the history of the Jewish people and in different positions, but always working directly by God, inspired directly by Christ. So we understand that here we will have in the message of the book of Jonah a directly message from Jesus. And the book of Jonah starts with the versicle. Vayehi davar Adonai el Yonah ben Amittai lemor, kum lech el Ninev העיר הגדולה, וקרא עלי כי עלתם רעתם לפניו. So God said to Jonah. We here see a symbolic way that the spirits were inspiring Jonah. And they said, go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim judgment upon it, for their weakness has become before me. What's happening here? We see in the book of Genesis that in some time of the story of the Jewish people, God says to Abraham that he would destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He would destroy because people there were evil. And when we read it in the simple words of the Old Testament, we actually can think that we are talking about a God that is giving punishment for the people. But actually, he's talking about the loss of cause and effect. And we are talking about a God that brings justice and mercy for all the people. And he sends his missionaries for all the peoples, for all people in earth, and in all times. So he's sending a message for these people of the city of Nineveh. And it's interesting that Jonah, he's the only prophet of the Old Testament that has a prophecy for the non-Jewish people. And Jonah, when he received this prophecy that he should go to the city of Nineveh, he becomes very sad. He becomes sad because, not because he had to take this message for non-Jewish people, but because he knew that the people of Nineveh, the non-Jewish people, they would understand his message and they would regret their hearts and they would approach the light of God. They would approach to the divine laws. So what it would happen for the Jewish people, that they received a lot of prophets and they were still recalcitrant with their hearts. They were still far from the light of God, far from looking and observing the divine laws. So in this moment, he gets very sad. We will understand a little bit further that there are two kinds of love. But before it, the book starts with Kum emlech, stand up, get up, and go. And go for the progress. This is the words that Jesus tells to Jonah. And this is the same words that Jesus will say many times in the Gospels. By example, in the healing at the pool of Bethsaida, in the chapter 5 of the book of John, the apostle, Jesus will say, get up and go. Take your mat and walk. And Emmanuel will explain to us that sometimes in life, we are facing situations that looks impossible to go on. That sometimes in life, we look and we feel a lot of pain and we cannot walk. That sometimes in our lives, we feel extremely tired. That sometimes in our lives, the criticism of our friends, of our family sometimes makes that we just want to give up. That sometimes we look around and we just see shadow. But in these moments, we should stand up. Stand up for our faith. We should be touched by in our conscience, by our faith, and for the message of God that comes to our conscience. And we should go on. We should go on in our faith and we should proceed for the future. Go on, kum emlech, stand up and go. It's actually a message for each and every one of us. When Jonah, he received this prophecy, he wanted to run away. He would run away to the city of Tarshish. In English, the city of Tarsus, the same city that Paul was born, the apostle. He was born. But was the prophet Jonah running away from God? We see in the Psalm 139 that the King David wrote before Jonah about the presence of God. And David, in this Psalm 139, he writes, where can I escape from your spirit, from the Spirit of God? Where can I flee from the presence of God? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I descend to Sheol, Sheol in Hebrew, it's the word of the dead people, where our spirit goes. If I descend to Sheol, you are still there. If I take the wing with dawn to the come of the rest on the western horizon, even there, your hand, the hand of God, will be guiding me. Your right hand will be holding me fast. So, actually, what David is bringing, that it was known by Jonah the prophet, is that you cannot run away from God. Because as fish into the sea, we are immersed in the universal cosmic fluid, and we cannot run away from the justice of God, but also we cannot run away from the divine providence of God. That's why it's written that God stays there holding us with his right hand, with the hand that we use to make charity, to show mercy, to show compassion, to show all the love we have by other people. So we understand that Jonah knew that he was not running away from God, but he was actually running away from his, from what he needed to do, from his mission. And many times in our lives, we know that we are running away from what we must do according to the divine law, but we just pretend that we can run away from our conscience, that we can run away from divine laws. In this way, we understand that he was running away from his mission because, as we said, he loved the Jewish people. But there are two kinds of love. There is one kind of love that we can say, by example, a mother that spoils the kids and gives everything for the first cry of the kid, and gives everything and doesn't allow the kid to learn exactly what's the purpose of life. This is one kind of love, but there is a kind of love that it's a mature love. It's a love that comes for a mother that understands that she has the mission of educating their kids for life. And educating for life means that you have to teach the moral of the Gospels, or if you're not Christian, the moral of God. And sometimes you cannot give straight what the kids want. You need to teach that you have to wait in life, that you have to be patient in life. You have to teach that you have to conquer morality, that you have to conquer your goals in life. So Jonah, in this moment, he shows that his love was a silly kind of love yet for the Jewish people, because he was afraid of bringing the good news, his prophecy, to the people of Nineveh, and they would regret their hearts. They would go back to the light of God. So Jonah here, he runs away because he didn't understand the most higher level of love. In Greek, the agape love. He didn't understand yet this way that he should love, yes, the Jewish people, but he should accomplish his mission. So he decides to run away, and he goes to the city of Yaffo, that nowadays is just by the city of the Tel Aviv, is the city of Job. And he goes to the port, and he looks for a ship that was departing for the city of Tarshish. And when he talks to the captain says to him, okay, we are leaving to Tarshish, but we have to wait. We have to wait that all the seats in the boat will be sold. In that times, we didn't have had American Airways, that we have flights every day, in every moment, every few hours, to different places or to the same place, every few hours difference, and he had to wait for weeks, probably. That everybody that wanted to go to the city of Tarshish would be on that boat. But Jonah says, no, how many places do you have here? I want to buy all the seats and we will leave immediately for Tarshish. And he buys all the places. And here he shows that he was moved by his human passions, especially by his egoism. Because in this moment of the book, he is not caring about the necessity of other people that might need to go to Tarshish and they would have to wait a long time. He didn't take care about the social importance of that boat and of that moment, of that ship for the population that should leave to Tarshish. And just with his egoism, he runs over everything and he leaves with the captain and few other passengers for the Tarshish city. When he leaves the port, the shore of Joppe, Yaffo, of the city, he seems to departure in a sunny, fresh day of summer. And here we have to stop once again and explain that we see that he was moved in his inner spirit by his human passions. And he was running away from God. And that's why he's departing for the Mediterranean Sea and not for the Red Sea. Symbolic, we remember that when the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, they went for the commandments of God. They received the commandments of God. And here, he's departing for his human passions. And every time we departure from our hearts for human passions, it looks like that we are in a sunny, fresh day of summer. But in few time, we will see that it will start in our lives a very big storm, a storm that comes after disillusion. Emmanuel will say to us that everything we see with our eyes in this world, it's dying or dead. In Hebrew, we say that this word calls olam hasheker, a word of lies, because everything we see is just illusions. It's just illusion in a physical world. And we have to use this for evolution in our spirit. So it was not different with Jonah and all that boat. When Jonah departure, after some time, it starts a huge storm. A huge storm that the captain says that he never saw a storm like that. And he says to everybody that they were in that ship that they should go up to the deck and they should pray for God. They should pray for God, and they were praying, but Jonah, that he was the only guy, he was the only one that was holding in his hand the first revelation, the faith that Moses brought, that Abraham brought, that Isaac, that Jacob, all the missionaries brought this faith on the creators of heavens and earth. He was the only one that had this faith, but he didn't pray for God. He goes down in the stairs of this boat, and he will stay there sleeping. And this storm was getting every time worse and stronger. So they decide that they should throw the weight of the boat into the sea, that the boat would be lighter, and being lighter, it would be easier to face this storm. So they start to throw the heavy stuff, and then after they decide to go to the bottom floor of this boat, and then decide to take the animals and throw the animals into the water of the sea. And when they are searching for animals and more heavy stuff, they face Jonah sleeping, and they wake him up and they say, how can you deal with such a storm? Sleeping in the bottom of this ship. You are wrong. And then he goes up and he looks in the horizon, and he will see that there were many other boats, but these other boats, They were in a flat and a calm sea, sailing. Let's stop and let's explain what's happening here. What's the metaphoric, symbolic way of understanding this according to the Spiritist view? First of all, this is not the only boat that we see in the New Testament or in the Old Testament. But there is a very important boat in the book of Genesis, the first book of Moses, that it's the Ark of Noah. The ark, the boat that Noah, he built to put all the animals and to save the humanity, let's say in a metaphoric way. And how was composed this boat? It had 3 floors. The bottom floor, exactly like the boat of Jonah, it had the animals. The second floor, it's where he put the food. And in the 3rd floor, it's where he kept his family. So these 3 floors. We see here that when Jonah is going to pray, or the people are going to pray, they go up to the deck. And when he's going to sleep, to close his eyes to the divine laws, to close his eyes for the storm, for what is happening in his life, he goes down where stays the animals. What's the meaning of this? Now, we will look at this according to what the Spirit of André Luiz says to us in the book Bigger Word, in the chapter 4, in the mental house of Calderário. And we will find that the mental house, it also has 3 floors. The first floor, it's in our mental house, it's where stays our subconscious, where we can find all the instincts, all the non-rational thinking. It's where we stay with all the automatisms. Let's say the organic automatisms that we have working in our body without raciocination, rational, without the reason, thinking. It happens without thinking. It comes from our instincts. If we go, let's say I'm driving my car in the traffic, and someone starts to horn to me and to fight, to get mad with me, and I also become angry with these people, with this person or these people, what happens? It's irrational. It comes from my subconscious. It comes from the first floor of the mental house. In the second floor of the mental house, we will find the foundations of today, the present, where I act for changing my tomorrow. In the first floor of the Ark of Noah, we find the animals, because the instinct comes from the anemic evolution. That's why it's non-rational, according to what Kardec says in the book Genesis. In the second floor, the food, because in the present, we find the challenge of the material, the physical world. We find the attraction for the physical world in the present. So here is where we act to change tomorrow. And the third floor, we have the connection with the divine, the connection with God. So in this third floor, we can find the human aspect of charity, of forgiving, of creating music, of all the things that connect us to God. So this is exactly like the Ark of Noah, and this is exactly as the boat that Jonah the prophet was inside. The text is talking about our spirit. The mental house of Calderário, it's our spirit itself. So we understand here to go down to the bottom floor is to connect yourself to your animality, to go up to the deck is to connect yourself to God. So what's the meaning? That when he goes up to the deck, he sees in the horizon that there were more boats, and these boats were in such a flat sea with no storm, in such a good weather, and they were facing a huge storm. What's the meaning of this? There are two levels of understanding. First level, we have to understand that when we see other people's life, especially in Facebook and Instagram, we see such a happy, such a calm life where people show fractions of their life and they show just the best things that happens. And you look to other people's life and say, okay, I'm living in such a storm and everybody around me, they are living in such a good life. What's happening here? So this is the first interpretation. But there is a second interpretation that when we are facing a storm in our lives and we look to the horizon, we will see that there is no problem, there is no pain, that there is no vicissitude that will stay forever. In the horizon, when we connect ourselves to God, go into the depth, go to the deck of the boat, when we go up in the mental house of Calderario to the third floor and we connect ourselves to God, we can see hope. We can see that this is going to pass. So in this moment, everybody sees on the boat that the horizon was calm. And they were started thinking, what's happening? That just our boat has this storm. There should be a guilty one here. There should be someone that made something to God that God dislikes and wants to punish him. Let's understand that if we are talking not about many people, but just one people, who is all these other guys, all these other people in this boat? This is the multiple reincarnation that we had. We had many experiences in other existence, in other lives, and this is recorded in our boat, in our spirit, the boat that we are in the sea, sailing for spiritual evolution. So they wanted to know, who is this guilty one? If we throw him into the sea, the storm will stop. So who is this guy? Let's check. But how could they check this? They decide to take a hat and they write all the names of the people that were there, and they put inside this hat, and they would take these names, and they said the name that goes out, it will be the one that is guilty for making angry God. We understand here that's just the effect of a cause. And the cause was running away from divine laws, running away from what we must do, running away from our mission in life. And who was this guy? This was Jonah. This was Jonah ben Amittai. So they take out one name and it comes Jonah ben Amittai. They put in the hat again, they mix it, and they take once again Jonah ben Amittai. And they did it several times, many times. And it comes always the same name. Which name? Jonah ben Amittai. Why? We see in the question 621 of the Book of Spirits, where it's written the divine laws. It's written in our conscience. What's the meaning? It means that we cannot fool ourselves. If we are honest with ourselves, we will know exactly that we are guilty for everything we did in life, for every mistake we had. God gives us the free will to take the right choice, but we can choose to go away from the light of God or approaching the light of God. And sometimes we choose to run away. So Jonah, he sees his conscience, and the head goes over the head, where stays our conscience, the connection with God in the house of Calderário, in the mental house of Calderário, the third floor. That's why they use the symbolic way of the hat. Why Jewish people use skipa and hats? To show always, to remember that God is above us. So that's why they use this symbolic way of showing that if you go for your conscience, you will always find the right answer for your life. And Jonah understood that he had guilt for the storm that was happening in his life. So they say, let's throw Jonah to the sea. But they could not throw the guy. He was the only one that has the faith in God, the creator of heavens and earth. How could throw him into the sea? They were afraid of God. So they decide, let's put him very slowly into the sea, very, very slowly. And they started putting him into the sea. And when he's immersing into the sea, the storm stops. And the sun comes, and they push him once again. They take him once again to the boat, and okay, the storm comes once again. They said, no, let's put him again into the sea, but slowly. When he has his feet into the waters of the sea, then what happens? The storm stops. And they would do it several times. And the storm will stop and will come back when he puts him into the water of the sea. What's the symbolic way of understanding the waters of the sea? The water always has an understanding in a symbolic, in a metaphorical way with the purification. When we talk about Noah in the book of Genesis, we knew that he built an ark and boat because there would be a flood. And the flood had the objective in the word to purificate, symbolic, metaphorical way of saying. When we see the baptism, it is done in the water because it's symbolic, says that the water is purificating. When we see that before being born, we stay for 40 weeks in the water in the belly of our mother. We stay 40 weeks in the water, then we are born, and we will feel the purification in this world after going into the water. So always the water means purification in the New Testament. So how can we understand what was happening with Jonah? They put him a little bit into the water and the storm would stop. Emmanuel says that we are very much in love with our immoral ways, with our immoral disease, with the immorality we have into our spirit. That there are nobody that falls, spiritually saying, that doesn't false loving his human passion. That we love our human passions much more than we love God. That's why we serve our human passions. So, to example, let's say that I am an alcoholic and I'm drinking and I live in my life a big storm. When I get home, I have a storm. When I go to my work, I have a storm because I have this addiction in my life. So I say, okay, I don't want anymore to live with this addiction. I want to live drinking. I want to stop drinking. I will not be an alcoholic anymore. So I think, and I say, okay, but I have good friends that they drink. I will just not drink 5 days of the week, and in the weekend, I can drink as much as I want, because, It's okay, I have friends that drinking, and if I'm not disturbing my job and my family, yeah, that's fine. So I stopped drinking for 5 days. When it comes to the Friday night and I start drinking again, I will see such a huge storm in my life and in my family and in my home. And then I say, okay, on Sunday at night, I say, I don't drink anymore. I will stay another week, and I stay another week, and I have peace. No storm in my life, no storm in my work, no storm in my family. And when it comes to Friday night and I start drinking again, what will happen? A storm. Why? Do I like storm? No, but I'm so much in love for drinking that I don't care about the storm. But there is a point, a moment in our lives that we just want to leave our moral addiction or our physical addictions. We just want to leave it behind. And we say, okay, now it's enough for me. Now I want to leave this behind. And I want to purify myself into the waters of purification. I want to purify my spirit. And I want to get rid, to vanish this from my spirit. So what do? I jump. Not slowly, as it was shown in the book of Jonah, but I jump straight into the waters of purification, and I say, it's enough. If I have friends that drinks and they make not good for me, I will not walk with them anymore. I will not sit with them to drink. If I use to drink just in the weekends, now I decide I don't want to drink alcohol anymore in my life. Also, this work with moral disease, with the things that we have to change in our inner spirit in a moral way. So this is what's telling us the book of Jonah. And Jonah, he was tired. He was so tired of storm in his life that he would jump into the water of the sea. And when he jumps into the water of the sea and he's sinking in the water of the sea, there comes a whale. Sorry, it's not a whale. I'm bad. I will say to you that it's not a whale. It's just a way of reading. But it's written that it's something, that it was created. It was in the Word since the beginning of the creation. And since the beginning of our creation, or our coming into this world, we have a purpose in our spiritual journey, the redemption. So the redemption time to look to the problems, to the situations that made Jonah to come to such a storm in his life, swallows him. It's not a whale, but I will say a whale. Okay. Then this whale, this huge fish, when he swallows Jonah, he will feel so warm. He will stay there for 3 days, and he will feel so comfortable, and it was good to be there. And he would walk inside this whale, and he would go to the ice and look through this ice and see all the ocean, all the bottom of the ocean. What's this meaning to us? What's the metaphorical way of understanding this? We understand that mainly all of us, we took wrong choices by our free will, and it took us to storm. We have many moral imperfections inside our spirit. We have many immoral addictions in our spirit. We have to change ourselves. But when we embrace our pain, our immoral problems, when we understand and we look to our life without feeling guilt of what happened before, and we, through self-knowledge, understand that we have to change, and to know that we have immoral imperfection in our spirit, it's good. It's good because from now on, we can choose to act in another way. We can choose to renovate ourselves in the waters of renovation, in the waters of the sea. We can change our acting. We can change what we do in the world, what we think, what we say, and we can go for a new life, for a renovation in a new man. We can leave the old man that is inside of us behind. So in this way, we understand why he was so warm, because he embraced his pain, his difficulties of his spirit. And through embracing this, he goes for a new moment where he will change his acting. So this fish, this whale says to Jonah, Jonah, look, there's a giant in the bottom of the sea. Its name is Leviathan. And the Leviathan, each day of the year, eats a huge fish. And today, you were chosen to be eaten. I was chosen to be eaten by this Leviathan. And Jonah say, okay, I'm not afraid. Take me to the Leviathan. And they go to the bottom of the sea, and he faces the Leviathan in the belly of this fish. And he says to the Leviathan, I am Jonah ben Amittai. I am Jonah, the son of Amittai. And I know that when the Mashiach, the Messiah, will come, I will cut your head and we will serve it in the feast, in the banquet with the Mashiach. What is this book trying to tell us? We know that it's very important to, through the self-knowledge, to embrace our moral difficulties. We know that we have to look to ourselves and find everything we have. We must transform, make this moral transformation for our spirit, we know. But Emmanuel will say to us that a student that never leaves the ABC, he will never understand the light of the teaching of the masters. Emmanuel will say that those one who goes inside to a church, bend their knees and they pray to God, but never leave the church to work hard for changing, or the worker that goes inside into a factory, and in this factory, that it's fully equipped for creating goods, but he will not work, he will not see the goods. Emmanuel says to us that a ship that it's fully equipped, but never leaves the shore, will never go to its goal, will never achieve its goal. We need to embrace our difficulties, spiritual difficulties, our moral diseases, our addictions, our human passions. We have to embrace, to look through the eyes of the self-knowledge. But after this, we have to work hard for changing in our spirit. And working hard for changing, it means that we will live inside us a war against ourselves, a war against the big giant that sometimes, or for thousands of years, lives inside each and every one of us. Our egoism, our pride, in a bad sense, in a way that your pride makes you to feel much, much better than everyone, and you just don't care about other people. You don't see people as your brothers and sisters of humanity. So you have to face the giant. We see in the Old Testament that David, the King David, he also faced a giant, Goliath. And when he faced Goliath, he cuts the head of Goliath. We know that it's much more stronger. One person that wins the war against yourself, that the man who wins 1,000 wars against the world. So to cut the head of the giant is just change the place where the giant is. With David, the giant was on the ground, in earth. With Jonah, the giant was just in the water, in the sea. So it doesn't matter where your giant is, but you have to go for this war against your egoism, against your human passions. And when you will be ready to win this war and not just throw the dust under the carpet, but really to get rid of this dust, to vanish this from our hearts, then you will be receiving the Messiah. You will be receiving the kingdom of heaven into your heart. And from this day one, you will change your life. So in this moment, after he's ready to cut the head of the Leviathan, he would be spit into earth and he would walk for 40 days to the city of Nineveh. And it's interesting that this 40, it looks like the Jewish people maybe are not very creative because in many passages of the Old and the New Testament, we find 40. The Jewish people walked in the desert for 40 days, 40 years. The flood of Noah, it happens for 40 days and 40 nights. The Jewish people, when they were in the Har Sinai, in the Sinai mountain, Moses go up for 40 days to bring the 10 Commandments. And we see many moments in the New Testament, Jesus went for 40 days into the desert after his baptism with John Baptist. So what's the understanding of, what's the meaning of this number 40? It means that you are preparing yourself, that you are getting ready for a change in your life. So we can go for 40 days, 40 years to change the situation which we are living, to go for a proof, to go for an aspiration, to go for trials, to go for a mission, to go for a change in your life. So I can say that I studied 40 days to understand the book of Jonah. It's not actually that I stayed 40 days, but it means that I was preparing myself to a change, to change my view on the book of Jonah. So this is the meaning of 40. As I told before, we stay 40 weeks on on the belly of our mothers. Then to be born, to have a change in our lives, in our spiritual journey, in this physical world. So Jonah, he walked for 40 days. But we said that it was the great Nineveh. Nineveh was a huge city. It was a very huge city. So how could he tell his prophecy to everybody? So it said in the book that he said the prophecy, and by a mediumistic phenomenon of direct voice, all the people from Nineveh listened to his prophecy at the same time. And when the people of Nineveh would listen to his prophecy, then Anashpir, the king of Nineveh, Anashpir is his name, he would go down from his throne and he would throw his clothes that were made in purple and fine linen. And this is something interesting also to understand the Gospels, because we see in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus that the rich man also used the same clothes. Which clothes? The purple and the fine linen. We see that in many places of the Old Testament, when this text wants to show that this person is full of egoism, it says that he's wearing purple and fine linen. I don't know if the pronunciation is right, but he's wearing these clothes. So what does it mean? It means, Emmanuel says, that means the egoism into our spirit. So the king of the city of Nineveh, he goes down. It means that he goes down from his egoism to his humility, and he leaves behind all this egoism for a change. And he would say that everybody in the city of Nineveh should feast. And what's the meaning of feast? Because here it's not saying that just the people, but this book says that all the animals also should feast, to give food to the animals that lives in the first floor of the mental house of Calderário, is to feed our animality, to give food, to make our animality grows. So the king of the city of Nineveh, when he listens to the good news that was bringing the prophecy of Jonah, he would not give food to the animality that lives inside him and inside his kingdom, the city of Nineveh. So it means that the people of Nineveh, they would regret their hearts and they would approach the light of God. And now, almost ending the talk, the lecture, we will understand that the book of Jonah is talking about each and every one of us. That by our free will, many times we run away from the light of God, from the divine laws of God. And for this reason, we will find, according to cause and effect law, the storm into our lives. But we are always ready to go up to the first floor, to the third floor of the mental house of Calderário, to go up in the connection into God. We can go up to the deck of our boat and we can get ourselves connected to God. And when we get ourselves connected to God, we will look into the horizon of our lives and we will see there in the future we will find peace into our hearts if we have the right strength, if we have the courage to change ourselves. We should jump into the water of purifications with the trust in God that He will be guiding us by His divine providence. With His right hand, He will be guiding us into the sea of purification. We should not feel guilt for our past. We should see our lives as with all the achievements that we made in the past, the pain and the good stuff that we did. And we should look into our moral imperfections and we should embrace this and say, okay, this brought me to this day, to the day that I can change my life. And I should not feel guilt, because guilt, according to Joanna de Angelis, she will say that this is the biggest reason for depression. And if we feel depression, if we feel tired, if we don't see light in this moment, if there are just shadow into our lives, stand up. Stand up as Jesus told to Jonah. Stand up for your life, for your faith. Stand up and go on. Go on into this work, into your inner spirit. When you understand that your mission is to go to the King that rules your heart, and you should tell him, okay, it's time you to leave the linen and the purple fine clothes that you are wearing, but now you should go for the work into your heart, for the work of transformation, for the work into the change in yourself and helping the change of the world. You should go for the purpose that all of us became spiritists, to work in the regeneration of our hearts and to be the hands that Jesus and all the prophets and all the religious past of our spirit is saying to us. You should be the workers of the last hour on the regeneration, to the regeneration of the world. The story of Jonah is telling so much about what we are living in these days of our lives, in this moment, that once I heard Dr. Bezerra de Menezes telling that he was listening for us, for our praise, for our asks, for our needs in our praise. But now he is asking each and every one of us that we together will be the workers for the regeneration of this world. We should stand up and go for the objective of inner transformation and being the workers of the last hour of the regeneration, in the regeneration of the world. Thank you very much, Jussara, and everybody.
I was muted. Thank you so much, Alvaro. It was really inspiring. Everything that you brought to us is we each time more understand the need we have to put all the things together. We cannot ignore, the basis of the history of religions that we have on the Bible, on the Old Testament, for instance, the scriptures. And with this story of Jonah, I think we can relate so much to this story, because I think in a way it happens to all of us when we are invited to serve, to be with God, but we refuse it for whatever reason. Most of the time, of course, is because of selfishly reasons, because we don't want to compromise, everything that we are having and living in the physical world. But this is something that brings our attention, very much like in the parable of the prodigal son or the prodigal child. It's time for us also to start taking this journey and returning to what we are actually destined to, which is to be with the grandeur of our Heavenly Creator. So that was really very inspiring. We had a lot of wonderful feedbacks, many people saying thank you, thanking the United States Spiritist Federation for this transmission as well. But before we go to our ending, I would like to say, if Alvaro would like to say something before we close this presentation.
I just want to thank you very much for this opportunity. It's my second time speaking in English in a talk, in a lecture, and it's a great challenge. And I hope I can improve my English and my study to share with all of you, because I'm very happy to be here. And thank you everybody for your patience of listening. Not my English, that's not so good.
No, it was great. It was great. It was, and above all, the topic that you brought to us is so interesting. I mean, it makes us really wanting to grab and to understand everything that you said. But the English is fine, and you just have to keep doing it. So we will be inviting you to do more. So this is a very good way of practicing. So for those who have been following us, for the past 2 months, we have been doing those Saturday presentations on behalf of the United States Spiritist Federation. We just would like to let you know that for the next 2 Saturdays, we will not have this presentation, because next Saturday we will be having our General Assembly here for the United States Spiritist Federation. And the following week, instead of having this just one presentation, actually we are going to be having the United States Spiritist Symposium. Is going to be our 14th year of the symposium. The topic is soul searching on a technological era. And as you all know, it was supposed to be in the Bay Area, but because of, all the situation that we are living, now we are going to have a virtual symposium that is going to take place June 6th and June 7th. So we will have both Saturday and Sunday beautiful presentation. So do not miss this opportunity. Saturday is going to be here in the US in the afternoon, and Sunday is going to be during the morning. So we will be waiting for all of you to join us. You can follow here on our YouTube channel, Facebook as well, and you can get more information on our Facebook, Instagram, in order to follow our talks. So for everyone that has been with us, we thank you very much for your presence. As we have been saying, this series of talking that we are trying to provide, they are going to be on our YouTube channel and Facebook as well. And we hope that, in 10 years, 20 years, we will still be assessing, because we are trying to bring, very important material, the content of the talks, so that they can be helping us throughout the future as well, even as reincarnated. Maybe, Alvaro, 50 years, 60 years from now, you're back, or 70, it has to be a bit more, too young. 7 years from now, you'll be coming back, and let me check this United States Spiritist Federation YouTube channel, and then you'll see yourself giving a talk. So we will also finish with our prayer of gratitude. So we invite all of you to follow us in this prayer of gratitude for all the blessings we have been receiving, for the resilience we are presenting during such a difficult period in humankind, and also for the clarity that we have, that somehow we can shed some comfort, and we can shed some light to the life of those that have not yet been blessed with this understanding of everything that Jesus taught us, everything that we have been finding brought by the prophets, by all of those that have been incessantly working for the improvement of us human beings. And we thank again our celestial creator for this opportunity, and may we continue this journey and find the strength to continue in this process of self-awareness and inner transformation. Have a blessed day, all of you, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time for our United States Spiritist Symposium. Thank you so much.